Welcome to The Atypical View. I'm your host, Lauren Florio, a licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in autism, ADHD, and broader neurodiversity. As a fellow neurodivergent mind, I'm here to help us learn and spread awareness on all things mental health, as well as help us unlearn harmful stereotypes by providing psychoeducation rooted in research and lived experience rooted in my atypical view. The Atypical View is obviously this podcast, but it's also my private practice where I provide therapy to clients here in California with me and provide neurodiverse coaching to others worldwide. So, without further ado, let's jump into The Atypical View. Hello, everyone. Today's going to be another smaller episode as we move into the holidays this week. With Thanksgiving coming up, I wanted to offer an opportunity for some reflection and gratitude in this smaller episode. I want to talk about honoring the truth of Thanksgiving while being able to still have some place for gratitude and give you some information on some neuroaffirming ways to practice gratitude and a little education on the science behind it. So I want to start by acknowledging that with Thanksgiving around the corner this week, we are reminded to pause and reflect, and I think that's a good thing. But I also think it's really important to acknowledge that the story that we grew up hearing, this very traditional story of Thanksgiving, is not only a myth and wildly inaccurate, but incredibly harmful. And the story of the Pilgrims and the Indians has caused lasting harm to Indigenous communities. And I know that that has made Thanksgiving a very controversial holiday for a lot of people. This narrative that's been told to so many of us growing up, it really erases the violence and the colonization and just the overall loss and grief that these communities had to experience and still hold. So I want to acknowledge here that it's important to practice awareness and compassion in recognizing that by just acknowledging that truth, we can still have time to practice gratitude, because that's the core of what I believe Thanksgiving is about, is this ability to pause and give thanks on what we have to be grateful for. So however you choose to spend this day, whether it is in quiet reflection with loved ones or in a big community event, it can be a reminder to connect with what we're grateful for in a way that feels authentic. While most of us understand what gratitude is to some degree, to give it a clean explanation, gratitude is simply just the recognition and sometimes outward appreciation of what brings us joy, value, safety, and basically just meaning in our life. What we have to look around and notice that we would be sad to lose. Gratitude is not about being perfect and always being thankful. It's not about hyper positivity or forced thankfulness for things we don't actually feel joy for. I think gratitude has the most power when it can actually honor what our lived experience and reality is, rather than just try to live in a toxic state of positivity. We don't have to be grateful for everything. We don't have to be grateful for every experience, but there is a lot of evidence that shows that gratitude is, in fact, very beneficial. Gratitude is not just this emotional practice. It is genuinely supported by research. We have a lot of studies that show that by practicing gratitude, we can enhance our overall well-being, our resilience, our acceptance for different aspects of our life, and basically just the general mental health. So there was a meta-analysis that found gratitude interventions of different kinds significantly improved someone's happiness, and it reduced the correlation of depression and anxiety across diverse populations. Another study found that women who were at risk for depression, it helped them improve their overall emotional health, find acceptance within themselves, and just reduce their depression symptoms in general. Gratitude is also associated with having better relationships. and better coping strategies, and basically building what I've mentioned is our window of tolerance, essentially being able to handle stress better and handle change and discomfort and all of these different things better, which I think is really cool. So I want to give some examples on how to practice gratitude that's especially neurodiverse affirming, because I know that the common practice is basically to make a big list of all the things that you're grateful for. And I don't think gratitude should be about forcing thanks for something or forcing gratitude. I think the more authentic we can make it, the better outcome we'll have. So some different approaches would be practicing sensory gratitude, which this is where we can spend a moment in a calming texture, a pleasant sound, a positive scent, such as really paying attention to how cozy the blanket wrapped around us feels, how warm it feels, how soft, or maybe really sitting in the experience of our favorite song and noticing how good we feel as the lyrics play, and taking a moment to acknowledge that pleasant sensory experience and have a moment of thanks for it. Micro gratitude is essentially the idea of basically identifying small wins throughout the day. This could be checking off a task on our to-do list. This could be making ourselves breakfast instead of skipping a meal, sending a text to a friend that we keep forgetting to reply to, or even just enjoying that our favorite song is playing on our commute to work. The next is the idea of relational gratitude. This is essentially showing thanks for the people in our life, in our space, who make us feel safe, who bring us joy, who, support us in some way, and basically make us feel authentic or don't ever make us feel judgment. And sometimes that acknowledgement is quite literally telling the person in our life, hey, I just want you to know that your friendship means a lot to me. Thank you for always being kind and accepting of who I am. I just want you to hear that. And sometimes it's just a moment with ourselves at night in our bed when we go, I'm really grateful that I have friends who love me, or a family who cares about me, or a partner who shows up for me, or a pet, my dog, who always licks my tears when I'm feeling sad, right? We just can have a moment to ourselves where we just internally acknowledge that. But I also think it's really important and powerful to acknowledge that to the person that we're feeling grateful for. The last example I'll give is the idea of body gratitude. And this is where we show thanks for ourselves and for our body for basically keeping us going in hard moments. Maybe you're a runner and you got an extra mile in. We show some gratitude that we were able to push our body to further limits. Maybe you are chronically ill and running is incredibly out of the question, but you were able to stand up on your own that day or feed yourself on your own that day or whatever it was, and you can show gratitude for your body for showing up for you in that moment. Sometimes for the average person, it's just being able to get through the workday when we were feeling extra tired, when we didn't get enough sleep. We can just have a moment where we say, thanks, body, for getting me through this hard day, and I'm grateful to be home now. I really like these practices in comparison to something like a daily gratitude journal where we have to sit in one moment and share a couple of things that we feel grateful for. I think that's great for getting into the habit of it, but I really like the idea of, this sensory or relational or body or just sort of generally micro gratitude, because I think it allows us to tune in a little bit more to the small details. And I think being able to find gratitude for small details is one step closer to finding contentment in our life. And I know a lot of people, they want to feel joy in their life, and that's a big goal. I would honestly argue that having contentment is the better goal, because I think it's the ability to have happiness without the highs. Of course, we want highs in our life, and everyone should be able to feel joy, but I think that there's something really powerful about feeling satisfied and feeling happy in a moment of calm, in a moment of simplicity. And I think gratitude helps build more happiness in moments of contentment. And I would rather feel content than constantly search for joy, if that makes sense. And that's because there's going to be more simple moments in your life than there are going to be highs or even lows. And I want to feel a state of peace and happiness in those moments. I also especially like these techniques because they align with nervous system regulation. And I think for us autistic, ADHD, and especially those of us who were late diagnosed and other neurodiverse individuals, integrating nervous system regulation into any of our self-care practices is really important. But especially if we can incorporate it into something like gratitude, I think we'll have a really great outcome. So I would just encourage you to give it a try this week. And you don't need to just wait for Thanksgiving to practice gratitude. You can find small, tiny moments throughout the day to show up and basically have a little moment of reflection. So I would encourage that. See how you feel, and I hope that it brings you a moment of content. Thanks for spending this time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it, subscribe, leave a comment or a review, or send it to someone who might benefit from the psychoeducation, or just need a little reminder that they are not alone. If you are interested in my coaching or therapy services, you can reach out to me directly and connect with me at theatypicalview.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and I hope we can stay connected.